The communication screen flickered to life aboard the Terran flagship Soul's Pride, casting an eerie blue glow across the bridge. Admiral Kyung-min straightened in his command chair as the alien face appeared before him. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, skin that shifted between purple and green, and a mouth full of needle-sharp teeth. "I am High Commander Vexitara of the Valorian Galactic Empire," the alien declared, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Your species has been discovered and catalogued. You will surrender immediately and accept integration into our empire as a servant race." Captain Haywan, standing beside the Admiral's chair, raised an eyebrow. She commanded the destroyer Busan Thunder and had seen many strange things in her 20 years of service, but nothing quite like this. The alien continued speaking, unaware of the amused glances being exchanged by the human officers. "You have 72 standard hours to comply with this directive," Vextara announced. "Your primitive vessels will stand down. Your leaders will present themselves for processing. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your homeworld and all colonial settlements." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Captain Haywan began to chuckle. The chuckle became a laugh, and soon half the bridge crew was joining in. "Did he just call us primitive?" Lieutenant Jae-sung asked from his station at communications. He was a young officer, barely out of the academy, but he had enough sense to find the situation absurd. Admiral Kyung-min held up a hand for silence, though he was smiling himself. "Gentlemen and ladies, it appears we have visitors, and they seem to have some interesting ideas about how first contact should work, Chief." Engineer Su-jin looked up from her console where she had been monitoring the alien transmission's technical aspects. "Sir, their broadcast technology is actually quite sophisticated. Bioluminescent quantum entanglement systems, if I'm reading this correctly. But their encryption is terrible. We could probably hack their entire fleet communication network with a decent computer and some patience." "Interesting," the Admiral mused. "What else can you tell me about our new friends?" Su-jin pulled up a holographic display showing the energy signatures she had detected. "They're using some kind of organic technology. Their ships seem to be partially alive, which is fascinating from an engineering perspective. But their power systems are inefficient. They're pouring enormous amounts of energy into maintaining those glowing hulls." Captain Haywan stepped forward. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to return to my ship and prepare for whatever these aliens have in mind. Something tells me they're not going to be happy when we decline their generous offer." "Declined?" Admiral Kyung-min turned to face her. "Who said anything about declining?" The captain's eyes widened slightly. "Sir? Oh, we're definitely declining," the Admiral clarified with a grin. "But I want to make sure we do it properly. Lieutenant Jae-sung, open a channel to all human settlements, colonies, and ships. I want everyone to see this transmission." Within minutes, the alien ultimatum was being broadcast across human space. On Earth, massive screens in city centers showed the recording of High Commander Vexitara's demands. In Seoul's Victory Square, a crowd began to gather. At first, people were confused. Then, as the full meaning of the message became clear, something unexpected happened. They started laughing. Dr. Yoonji was treating patients in Seoul General Hospital when the broadcast began. She stopped her work to watch, along with every other person in the building. When the alien finished speaking, one of her patients, an elderly man recovering from surgery, looked at her with tears of laughter in his eyes. "Did that thing just threaten to destroy Earth?" he asked. "I believe so," Dr. Yunji replied, trying to maintain her professional composure. Well, the old man chuckled, this should be interesting. Across the city, similar scenes were playing out. Merchant Captain Dong Ho was loading cargo onto his freighter when his crew called him over to watch the transmission. After seeing it, he canceled his shipping run and began calling his contacts in the Civilian Defense Corps. "Boys," he told his crew, "I think we're about to have some uninvited guests, and I don't think they're going to be very polite." Back aboard the Soul's Pride, Admiral Kyung Min was receiving reports from across human space. The response was remarkably uniform. Nobody was panicking. Nobody was demanding surrender. Instead, there was a strange sense of excitement, as if humanity had been waiting for something like this for decades. "Sir," Lieutenant Jae-sung reported, "I'm getting responses from all major colonies and military installations. Luna Base is asking if they should activate the defense grid. Mars Command wants to know if they should recall their patrol fleets, and the outer colonies are volunteering their mining ships for military service." Chief Engineer Soo Jin looked up from her console with a puzzled expression. "Admiral, I'm detecting something odd. These Valorians seem to have no idea what they're dealing with. Their intelligence about us is completely wrong." "How wrong?" the Admiral asked. "They think we're pre-industrial. Their files describe us as barely capable of interplanetary flight and technologically primitive. They have no record of our faster-than-light drives, our orbital shipyards, or our weapon systems. It's like they scanned us 200 years ago and never bothered to update their information." Captain Haewon whistled softly. "That's a significant intelligence failure on their part." "It gets better," Soo Jin continued. "Based on what I can intercept from their communications, they think our ships are made of metal alloys and use chemical propulsion. They have no idea we've been using plasma drives and neutronium armor for the past 50 years. Admiral Kyung Min leaned back in his chair, considering this information. "So they're coming here expecting to find a bunch of primitives flying around in chemical rockets, and instead they're going to encounter a fully modern spacefaring civilization with military technology they can't even recognize." "That's about the size of it, sir," Soo Jin confirmed. "Lieutenant Jae-sung," the Admiral called out, "prepare a response to our alien friends. Something polite but firm." The young officer's fingers flew over his console. "Channel open, sir." Admiral Kyung Min stood and faced the communication screen. When he spoke, his voice was calm and professional, but there was steel beneath the courtesy. "High Commander Vex Tara of the Valorian Galactic Empire. This is Admiral Kyung Min of the Terran Defense Fleet. We have received your ultimatum and given it due consideration. After consulting with our government and our people, I am authorized to provide you with our official response." He paused for effect, then smiled slightly. "We respectfully decline your offer. Earth and all human settlements will remain independent. We suggest you reconsider your approach to first contact. Threats and ultimatums are generally considered poor diplomatic form among civilized species." The Admiral's expression grew more serious. "However, if you insist on pursuing hostile actions against humanity, we will be forced to defend ourselves. We hope this will not be necessary, but we are prepared for any eventuality." He gestured to Lieutenant Jae-sung, who cut the transmission. "Think they'll listen to reason?" Captain Haewon asked. "Not a chance," Admiral Kyung Min replied cheerfully. "Lieutenant, send word to all fleet commanders. Tell them to prepare for company, and remind them that our guests apparently think we're still throwing rocks at each other." "Should we correct their misconceptions, sir?" "Oh, no," the Admiral said with a grin that would have worried the aliens considerably if they could have seen it. Let's let them figure it out the hard way. Sometimes the best education comes from practical experience. As the crew prepared for what was to come, none of them felt fear. Instead, there was a sense of anticipation, as if humanity had finally found something worth uniting against. After thousands of years of fighting each other, they were about to face an external threat, and they were looking forward to it. High Commander Vextara stood in the central command chamber of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion. The chamber was a work of art, with living walls that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns and a ceiling that showed the stars. Beyond, his four eyes focused on the holographic display showing the human response to his ultimatum. Sub-Commander Keltar, he called to his tactical advisor, a smaller Valorian with silver-tinted skin, explain to me how these primitives dare to refuse the might of the Galactic Empire. Keltar approached nervously, his skin shifting to a pale blue color that indicated anxiety among his species. High Commander, perhaps they do not fully understand our power. Their intelligence files suggest they are a very young species, barely out of their home system. Show me these files again, Vextara commanded. The holographic display changed to show what appeared to be crude spacecraft made of metal plates welded together. The ships looked like flying boxes with simple chemical thrusters attached. The ice weapons were described as primitive kinetic projectiles and basic explosive devices. These humans achieved faster-than-light travel only 200 of their years ago, Keltar explained. They appear to have expanded rapidly, but their technology remains crude. Look at these ship designs. No grace, no beauty, just functional metal boxes. Vextara examined the images with growing confidence. The human vessels looked like something a child might build from scrap metal. Compared to the elegant curves and living materials of Valorian ships, they were laughably primitive. And their weapons? The High Commander asked. Simple kinetic projectiles, sir. Metal slugs fired by chemical explosions. Their largest weapons appear to be fusion warheads, but the delivery systems are crude missiles that any decent point defense system could intercept. Meanwhile, thousands of light years away, Lieutenant Jae Sung sat in the communications center of the stealth frigate Incheon Ghost. The ship was invisible to Valorian sensors, having been designed specifically for intelligence gathering. Its hull was covered in adaptive camouflage that could mimic empty space or asteroid surfaces. Jae Sung had been monitoring Valorian communications for the past 6 hours, and what he was hearing made him alternate between amazement and amusement. The aliens were completely wrong about everything. Captain, he called to the ship's commander, Captain Min-ho, a veteran officer with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes. You need to hear this. Captain Min-ho came over to the communications station and put on a headset. Through the universal translator, he could hear Valorian officers discussing the upcoming battle. The humans will probably surrender when they see our fleet, one voice was saying. Their weapons cannot penetrate our bioshields, and their ships are too slow to escape our pursuit craft. Another voice chimed in with what sounded like laughter. I heard they still use metal projectiles. Metal. Can you imagine? We'll be done before our morning meal. Captain Min-ho removed the headset and shook his head. They really have no idea, do they? None whatsoever, sir, Jae Sung confirmed. According to their intelligence files, we're still using chemical rockets and throwing rocks at each other. On the bridge of the battle cruiser, Daegu Hammer, Chief Engineer Su-jin was making final preparations to what the Valorians would have considered impossible weapons. The ship's main gun was a mass driver that could accelerate a tungsten projectile to 30% of light speed. The engineering behind it was elegant in its simplicity. Use magnetic fields to accelerate a metal slug until it became a relativistic weapon. "Engineering to bridge," Sujin called over the intercom. "Main gun is ready for operation. All 6 secondary batteries are loaded and calibrated. Point defense systems are online." The captain of the Daegu Hammer, Commander Jin Woo, acknowledged the report. He was a quiet man who had spent his career in the outer colonies, fighting pirates and protecting mining operations. He understood the value of practical weapons over elegant theories. "How long until the alien fleet arrives?" he asked his navigation officer. "Based on their current trajectory, approximately 18 hours, sir." "Plenty of time," Commander Jin Woo mused. "Sujin, what do you think of their bioshields?" The chief engineer's voice came back immediately. "Beautiful technology, sir. Very sophisticated energy manipulation. They can probably stop any energy weapon we might throw at them. And kinetic projectiles? Well, sir, that's where things get interesting. Their shields are designed to deflect plasma bolts and laser beams. They work by creating electromagnetic fields that redirect energy. But a solid projectile moving at relativistic speeds, that's not energy. That's matter. And matter follows. Different rules. Back on the Eternal Dominion, High Commander Vexitara was receiving reports from his scout ships. They had reached the edge of the human solar system and were transmitting data about the enemy fleet. "High Commander," Keltar reported, "our scouts confirm the intelligence files. The human ships are indeed crude metal constructs. They appear to be arranged in a defensive formation around their homeworld." "How many ships?" Vextara asked. "Approximately 150 vessels of various sizes. The largest appear to be their battleships, though they look more like flying fortresses than proper warships." Vexitara studied the tactical display. The human ships were positioned in a sphere around Earth, with smaller groups defending the orbital installations. It was a basic defensive formation, exactly what he would expect from a primitive species. "What is the status of our fleet?" 300 ships of the 3rd Imperial Fleet are ready for battle, High Commander. The bioshields are at full power, and all weapon systems are charged. The fleet commanders are confident of victory. On Earth, the mood was surprisingly festive. In Seoul's Victory Square, vendors were selling snacks to the crowds watching the news broadcasts. Children played games pretending to be space captains, while adults discussed the situation with the casual interest usually reserved for sporting events. Dr. Yunji had finished her shift at the hospital and was walking home when she stopped to watch one of the public broadcasts. A military analyst was explaining the situation to a reporter. "The aliens seem to think we're still using primitive technology," the analyst was saying. "This suggests their intelligence gathering is severely outdated. It's possible they haven't updated their files on humanity in decades. What does this mean for the upcoming battle?" the reporter asked. "Well," the analyst said with a slight smile, "it means they're in for a significant surprise." Merchant Captain Dong Ho was at the Civilian Defense Corps headquarters volunteering his freighter for military service. The Corps was overwhelmed with volunteers, ship captains, miners, construction workers, even retired military personnel were offering their services. "Sir," Dong Ho told the recruitment officer, "my ship might not look like much, but she's got good engines and decent shielding. If you need cargo moved or civilian evacuations, I'm your man." The officer, a middle-aged woman with sergeant's stripes, looked at the registration for Dong Ho's ship. "Actually, Captain, we have a different job in mind. How do you feel about carrying mining charges instead of regular cargo?" Dong Ho grinned. "Ma'am, I've been hauling explosives through asteroid fields for 15 years. I think I can handle whatever you have in mind." Back in space, the Valorian fleet was making final preparations for battle. High Commander Vex Tara stood before a gathering of his ship commanders, all of them confident in their superior technology and training. "Fellow warriors," he announced, "we stand on the threshold of another glorious victory for the Empire. These humans are primitives who refuse to acknowledge our rightful dominance. We will show them the error of their ways." The assembled commanders expressed their agreement in the traditional Valorian manner, a harmonious humming that filled the chamber. "Their weapons cannot harm us," Vex Tara continued. "Their ships are slow and clumsy. This will be a demonstration of Valorian superiority, a lesson for any other primitive species that might consider defying the Empire." Unknown to the Valorians, Lieutenant Jae Sung was recording every word from his position aboard the invisible Incheon Ghost. The alien confidence was almost touching in its naivety. "Captain," he whispered to Captain Minho, "they really think this is going to be easy." "Let them think that," the captain replied quietly. "Overconfidence has ended more battles than superior firepower." As the hours passed, both fleets prepared for the coming confrontation. The Valorians checked their elegant bioshields and charged their plasma weapons, confident in their technological superiority. The humans quietly loaded their mass drivers and calibrated their targeting systems, knowing that the enemy had no idea what was coming. The stage was set for a battle that would change the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be a warrior species. The Valorian fleet materialized at the edge of the Sol system like a swarm of glowing jellyfish emerging from the depths of space. 300 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with patterns of blue and green light. Each vessel was a work of art, flowing curves and organic shapes that seemed more grown than built. High Commander Vex Tara stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. His flagship alone was larger than most human cities, a massive organism bred for war and shaped by centuries of Valorian bioengineering. The smaller ships of his fleet spread out around it like children following their parent. Sub-Commander Keltar, he called, "open a channel to the human fleet. Let us give them one final chance to surrender before we demonstrate the futility of resistance." The communication system activated, sending Vex Tara's image across space to every human ship in the system. On the bridge of the Soul's Pride, Admiral Kyung-min received the transmission with the same calm demeanor he had shown throughout the crisis. "Humans," Vex Tara began, his 4 eyes gleaming with confidence, "behold the might of the Valorian Empire. 300 ships of the Imperial Third Fleet have come to claim your system. Your primitive vessels cannot hope to stand against our technology. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Admiral Kyung-min listened to the entire speech without changing expression. When it was finished, he stood and faced his own communication screen. "High Commander Vex Tara," he said politely, "we appreciate your concern for our welfare, but we must again decline your generous offer. We respectfully suggest that you leave our system immediately. This is your final warning." The transmission ended, leaving Vex Tara staring at a blank screen. For a moment he was speechless. Then he began to laugh, a sound like wind chimes being shaken by a storm. "Did you hear that, Keltar? They gave us a warning. These primitives actually believe they can threaten the Imperial fleet." On Earth, the massive screens in every major city showed the alien fleet's arrival. In Seoul's Victory Square, the crowd had grown to tens of thousands. Street vendors moved through the packed masses selling food and drinks, while children sat on their parents' shoulders to get a better view of the screens. Dr. Yunji had joined the crowd after finishing her hospital shift. She stood next to Ao, an elderly man who was explaining the situation to his grandson. "You see, boy," the old man was saying, "those aliens think we're still living in caves and throwing rocks at each other. They have no idea what humans are really capable of when we put our minds to something." "Are we going to win, grandfather?" the boy asked. The old man chuckled and pointed at the screen, where the human fleet was visible as small dots of light, arranged around Earth. "Watch and learn, child. Watch and learn." Merchant Captain Dong Ho was aboard his freighter, now loaded with special cargo provided by the Civilian Defense Corps. His ship was one of hundreds of volunteer vessels that had been quietly positioned throughout the outer system. To the Valorians, they would look like harmless cargo haulers and mining ships. The aliens had no way of knowing that each one carried enough explosives to crack an asteroid. "All civilian volunteers, this is Admiral Kyung Min," came the voice over the communication system. "Thank you for your service to humanity. Remember, wait for the signal. Do not engage until the military fleet has made first contact." "Understood, Admiral," Dong Ho replied, along with hundreds of other civilian captains. He looked at his cargo hold full of mining charges and smiled. This should be interesting. Back on the Eternal Dominion, High Commander Vexitara was growing impatient. The human fleet had not moved from its defensive positions, and no surrender. Message had been received. "Keltar, how long until we reach engagement range?" "Approximately 30 minutes, High Commander. The humans appear to be maintaining their positions around their homeworld." "Good. Signal the fleet to prepare for battle. We will destroy their orbital installations first, then proceed to pacify the planet itself." Unknown to the Valorians, their every communication was being monitored by Lieutenant Jae Sung aboard the stealth frigate Incheon Ghost. The ship remained invisible, its advanced camouflage systems making it appear to be nothing more than empty space. "Captain Min Ho," Jae Sung reported quietly, "the aliens are planning to target our orbital platforms first. They expect us to break formation and try to protect them." Captain Min Ho nodded. "Standard Imperial tactics. Destroy the infrastructure, then demand surrender. Let Admiral Kyung Min know their intentions." The message was relayed instantly to the flagship, where Admiral Kyung Min received it with interest. He turned to Captain Hai Wan, who had remained aboard the Soul's Pride, for the battle. "Captain, it appears our guests are following a predictable battle plan. They want to destroy our orbital installations to demonstrate their power." "Should we move to protect them, sir?" Hai Wan asked. "Not yet. Let them make their move first. I want to see exactly what their weapons can do before we reveal our own capabilities." Chief Engineer Su Jin was monitoring the alien fleet from her position aboard the battlecruiser Daegu Hammer. Her instruments were analyzing every energy emission from the Valorian ships, building a detailed picture of their technology. "Fascinating," she murmured to herself. "Their bioshields are even more sophisticated than I thought. They're not just deflecting energy. They're actually absorbing it and redistributing it throughout the ship's living hull. Very elegant." "Can we penetrate them?" asked Commander Jin Woo. "With energy weapons? Probably not. But sir, those shields are designed for a completely different type of warfare. They're expecting plasma bolts and laser beams. A solid projectile moving at relativistic speeds is something they've probably never encountered." The two fleets drew closer together, the Valorian ships glowing like a constellation of alien stars. The human vessels looked dark and angular by comparison, their neutronium armor absorbing light rather than reflecting it. To the aliens, they appeared primitive and threatening, like weapons of war rather than works of art. "Sir," reported the navigation officer on the Soul's Pride, "the alien fleet is entering our outer defensive perimeter." Admiral Kyung-min stood and walked to the main view screen. The Valorian ships were beautiful, he had to admit. They moved with grace and purpose, their formations shifting like schools of luminous fish. But beauty wouldn't stop a tungsten slug moving at 30% of light speed. "All ships, this is Admiral Kyung-min," he announced over the fleet communication channel. "Weapons free. Engage at will." On the Busan Thunder, Captain Haiwan smiled as she heard the order. Her destroyer was one of the fastest ships in the human mind fleet, designed for hit-and-run tactics against pirates and raiders. "Helm, take us into the alien formation. Weapons, target the lead cruiser. Let's show these aliens how humans say hello." The Valorian fleet was still moving in perfect formation when the first human ship opened fire. Captain Haiwan's destroyer launched a spread of kinetic penetrators. Tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields. The projectiles were invisible to the naked eye, moving too fast to track visually. The lead Valorian cruiser never knew what hit it. The bioshields that could deflect plasma and absorb laser fire were useless against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The tungsten rods punched through the alien hull like needles through paper, carrying so much kinetic energy that they caused the ship's bioluminescent systems to overload. The cruiser's death was spectacular. Bioelectric feedback cascaded through its living systems, causing the entire hull to flash brilliant white before going dark forever. The ship tumbled through space, its elegant curves now marked by perfectly round holes. "Impossible!" Vextara shouted as he watched his ship die. "Their weapons. They're using solid projectiles. How are they moving so fast?" Sub-Commander Keltar was frantically analyzing the attack. "Hi, Commander. Those projectiles were traveling at significant fractions of light speed. I don't understand how primitive kinetic weapons could achieve such velocities." Before Vexitara could respond, more human ships opened fire. The elegant Valorian formation began to dissolve as vessel after vessel found itself under attack from weapons that their shields couldn't stop. The aliens tried to return fire, but their plasma weapons were designed for long-range dueling between ships with similar technology. The humans, it turned out, preferred to fight at close range. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Vextara commanded. "Reform at maximum range and engage with long-range bombardment." But the human fleet had other ideas. Instead of maintaining their defensive positions, they were advancing aggressively, their dark ships cutting through space like sharks, sensing blood in the water. On Earth, the crowds in Victory Square erupted in cheers as the first alien ship exploded on their screens. The old man who had been talking to his grandson pumped his fist in the air. "There we go!" he shouted. "That's how humans fight. No fancy dancing around, just point and shoot." Dr. Unji found herself cheering along with everyone else. The sight of the Valorian fleet, which had seemed so intimidating just moments before, now looked considerably less impressive as human weapons began tearing through their formations. The battle had begun, and the aliens were learning their first hard lesson about humanity. The Valorian cruiser. Luminous Victory fired what its captain believed would be a devastating plasma barrage at the approaching human destroyer. The bioluminescent weapons charged with organic energy, sending streams of superheated matter across space in elegant spirals of blue and gold. The attack was beautiful to watch, like liquid starlight painting patterns against the darkness. Captain Haiwan watched the plasma bolts approach her ship, the Busan Thunder, with professional interest. The alien weapons were impressive, but they were designed for a different kind of warfare. Her destroyer's neutronium armor was specifically engineered to absorb and dissipate energy attacks. Shields holding at 97%, reported her weapons officer. Their plasma is actually making our hull stronger. The neutronium is absorbing the energy and redistributing it to the armor matrix. Excellent, Hay-1 replied. Return fire. Full spread. Center mass. The Busan Thunder's response was immediate and devastating. 6 tungsten penetrators accelerated to 30% of light speed, each one carrying the kinetic energy of a small asteroid. The Valorian cruiser's bio-shields flared brilliantly as they tried to deflect the incoming projectiles, but solid matter traveling at relativistic speeds followed different rules than energy weapons. The first penetrator punched through the alien ship's living hull with a sound like tearing silk. The second and third followed microseconds later, each one creating perfectly circular holes that glowed white-hot at the edges. By the time the 6th projectile hit, the luminous Victory was already dying, its bioelectric systems cascading into failure. Sir, Sub-Commander Keltar reported to High Commander Vexatara, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. We've lost 17 ships in the first exchange. The human weapons they're using kinetic projectiles moving at impossible speeds. Vexatara stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His elegant fleet formations were being torn apart by weapons that shouldn't exist. The humans were supposed to be primitives, barely capable of spaceflight. How were they generating such incredible velocities with simple kinetic weapons? Analysis, he demanded. How are they accelerating solid projectiles to those speeds? Unknown, High Commander. Our intelligence files make no mention of this technology. The projectiles appear to be simple tungsten rods, but they're moving fast enough to punch through our bio-armor like it was tissue paper. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Jae Sung aboard the stealth frigate Incheon Ghost was recording every moment of the Valorian confusion. His ship remained invisible, its adaptive camouflage allowing it to observe the battle from within the alien formation. Captain, Min-ho, he whispered. The aliens are completely bewildered. They're trying to understand how we're generating those velocities with primitive kinetic weapons. Captain Min-ho smiled grimly. Let them figure it out the hard way. How long until our stealth ships are in position? 3 minutes, sir. All 15 stealth frigates are moving into attack positions throughout their formation. For the past 6 hours. While the Valorians had been approaching the Sol system, human stealth ships had been quietly maneuvering into position. The alien sensors, designed to detect energy signatures and bioluminescent trails, were completely blind to the human vessel's adaptive camouflage systems. Chief Engineer Su Jin was having the time of her life aboard the battle cruiser Daegu Hammer. Her mass drivers were performing flawlessly, sending tungsten rods into the alien formation with mechanical precision. Each shot was calculated to maximum effect, targeting structural weak points that her analysis had identified in the Valorian. Ship designs. Commander Jin Woo, she called out. Their bio-armor is actually quite clever. It's designed to heal itself by redirecting energy from damaged areas. But kinetic impacts create physical holes that their healing systems can't close fast enough. Keep firing, Commander Jin Woo ordered. Target their larger ships. Let's see how their healing systems handle multiple simultaneous impacts. The Daegu Hammer's main gun charged for another shot, magnetic fields building to incredible strength. When it fired, the tungsten projectile accelerated down the ship's spine, exiting at a significant fraction of light speed. The target, a Valorian battleship, tried desperately to evade, but its organic systems were too slow to react to something moving that fast. The projectile struck the alien battleship just below its command section. The kinetic energy transfer was immediate and catastrophic. The entire front third of the ship simply disintegrated, its living hull unable to contain the forces unleashed by the impact. The remaining sections tumbled through space, their bioluminescent patterns flickering and dying. "Impossible!" Vexatara roared as he watched another of his ships die. "How are these primitives destroying vessels that have conquered star systems? Our bio-armor has never failed against any weapon." "High Commander," Keltar said quietly, "perhaps our intelligence about these humans was incomplete." Before Vexatara could respond, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. Human ships were materializing throughout his formation, their stealth systems finally revealing themselves as they opened fire at point-blank range. Lieutenant Jae Sung's Incheon Ghost dropped its camouflage directly beneath a Valorian destroyer. The stealth frigate's weapons were smaller than those of the main battle fleet, but at this range, size didn't matter. Tungsten penetrators fired from less than a kilometer away punched through the alien ship's hull like bullets through paper. All "Stealth units, this is Ghost Leader," Jae Sung announced over the tactical channel. "Weapons free, make every shot count." 15 human stealth ships opened fire simultaneously from within the Valorian formation. The aliens found themselves under attack from weapons they couldn't see, fired by ships they hadn't detected. Their elegant formations dissolved into chaos as captains tried to identify threats that seemed to materialize from empty space. The Valorian destroyer Swift Needle exploded in a cascade of bioelectric feedback as penetrators severed its main neural pathways. The cruiser Harmony of Stars listing helplessly as its propulsion organs were destroyed by kinetic impacts. Throughout the alien fleet, the same scene repeated itself as human weapons proved devastatingly effective against biotechnology designed for a different kind of war. "Sir," the communications officer on the Soul's Pride called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the alien flagship." Admiral Kyung-min nodded. "Put it through." High Commander Vextara's image appeared on the screen, his 4 eyes wide with something that might have been fear or rage. The alien's skin was shifting rapidly through different colors, indicating extreme emotional distress. "Human Commander," Vexatara said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "What manner of weapons are these? Our intelligence indicated you possessed only primitive kinetic projectiles." Admiral Kyung-min smiled politely. "High Commander, these are primitive kinetic projectiles. We're simply very good at making them go fast." "That's impossible. No kinetic weapon can achieve such velocities." "I'm afraid your information is somewhat outdated," the Admiral replied. "We've had magnetic acceleration technology for quite some time. It's really not that complicated. Just use magnetic fields to accelerate metal objects. The principle is the same as an ancient bow and arrow, just with better engineering." On Earth, the crowds watching the battle were going wild. In Seoul's Victory Square, people were cheering and singing as they watched the alien fleet being systematically destroyed by human weapons. The old man who had been explaining things to his grandson was dancing with joy. "You see, boy," he shouted over the noise, "this is what happens when you underestimate humanity. These aliens thought they were dealing with primitives, but they forgot that humans have been killing each other efficiently for thousands of years." Dr. Yoonji found herself swept up in the celebration, despite her normally calm demeanor. Around her, tens of thousands of people were celebrating humanity's unexpected victory over a supposedly superior alien force. Children were cheering, Adults were crying with relief and joy, and vendors were selling victory over the stars commemorative drinks. Merchant Captain Dong Ho watched the battle from his position in the outer system, his freighter loaded with mining charges. He hadn't been called into action yet, but watching the military fleet tear through the aliens was deeply satisfying. "Well," he said to his crew, "looks like our boys don't need much help after all. These aliens picked the wrong species to mess with." Back in the battle zone, High Commander Vextara was facing the complete collapse of his fleet. In less than 30 minutes, he had lost over 50 ships to weapons that shouldn't exist. The humans were fighting with a brutality and efficiency that violated every principle of civilized warfare. "Sub-Commander Keltar," he said quietly, "signal the fleet to retreat to maximum range. We need to reassess this situation." "Sir, what about our mission to pacify this system?" Vexitara looked at the tactical display, where human ships were methodically hunting down his remaining vessels. The primitives had become predators, and his mighty fleet was being torn apart by weapons that his empire's greatest minds had never imagined. "I think," he said slowly, "we may need to reconsider our approach to these humans." High Commander Vexitara watched in growing horror as his fleet attempted to retreat to a safer distance. The human ships, rather than maintaining their defensive positions, were advancing aggressively. Their dark, angular vessels moved through space like predators sensing wounded prey. "Sub-Commander Keltar," he called urgently, "how many ships have we lost?" 63 destroyed, 15 more heavily damaged," Keltar replied, his skin now a pale gray color that indicated deep shock among his species. "High Commander, their weapons, they're not just primitive kinetics. They're using some form of magnetic acceleration that our databases have no record of." Chief Engineer Su Jin aboard the battlecruiser Daegu Hammer was analyzing the retreating Valorian vessels with professional interest. Her sensors showed that the alien biotechnology was even more sophisticated than she had first realized, but it had a fundamental weakness. "Commander Jin Woo," she reported, "their ships are trying to regenerate damage by redirecting bioenergy from undamaged sections. It's fascinating technology, but it has limits. If we can overwhelm their healing capacity with multiple simultaneous hits, they can't recover." "Understood," Commander Jinwoo replied. "All batteries, concentrate fire on the enemy battleship. Let's test their regeneration limits." The Daegu Hammer and 3 other human heavy cruisers targeted the same Valorian battleship simultaneously. 12 tungsten penetrators, each moving, at 30% of light speed, struck the alien vessel within milliseconds of each other. The ship's bioarmor tried desperately to heal the damage, but there were too many wounds to close. The battleship's death was slow and agonizing. Its living hull pulsed with desperate energy as it tried to seal the massive holes, but the kinetic impacts had caused too much structural damage. Finally, the ship's neural systems failed, and the great vessel went dark, tumbling through space, like a dead whale. Captain Minho's stealth frigate Incheon Ghost was still hidden within the Valorian formation, observing the aliens' panic at close range. Lieutenant Jae Sung was recording their communications, and what he heard was revealing. "They're completely confused, Captain," Jae Sung whispered. "Their officers are reporting that human weapons violate the laws of civilized warfare. Apparently, no species in their empire uses kinetic weapons at these velocities." "Interesting," Captain Minho replied quietly. It sounds like the Galactic Empire has been fighting energy weapon duels for so long that they've forgotten about good old-fashioned projectiles. What the humans were witnessing was the result of millennia of technological evolution along different paths. The Valorian Empire had developed elegant energy weapons and sophisticated bioshields that could deflect or absorb plasma and laser fire. Their entire military doctrine was based on graceful, long-range combat between ships that could repair themselves and fight for days or weeks. Humanity had taken a different approach. Human military engineers had focused on making projectiles go faster and armor get thicker. The result was weapons that could punch through anything and defenses that could absorb tremendous amounts of punishment. It was crude by Valorian standards, but devastatingly effective. Commander Jin Woo was about to demonstrate just how effective human engineering could be. His ship, the heavy cruiser Ulsan Fury, was equipped with something that would have horrified the aliens if they had understood what it was. Sujin, he called to his chief engineer, prepare the construction mechs for combat deployment. Sir? Sujin looked up from her console in surprise. The construction mechs aren't weapons systems. No, but they're built to work in the vacuum of space. They have industrial-grade cutting tools, and they're heavily armored against asteroid impacts. Sometimes the best weapon is one your enemy isn't expecting. The Ulsan Fury approached a damaged Valorian cruiser that was trying to retreat while repairing its wounds. The alien ship's bio-armor was glowing with healing energy, slowly closing the holes left by tungsten penetrators. It was a beautiful sight, like watching a living creature heal itself through force of will. Then the human construction mechs deployed. 6 massive mechanical suits, each one designed to build orbital installations in the depths of space, jetted away from the Ulsan Fury toward the alien ship. They looked like flying construction equipment, which is exactly what they were. But construction equipment built to work in space was also remarkably well suited for tearing things apart. The Valorian crew watched in bewilderment as the human mechs landed on their hull and began cutting through their bio-armor with industrial plasma torches. These weren't weapons. They were tools designed to cut through asteroid rock and metal plating. The bio-armor, sophisticated as it was, had no defense against this kind of attack. "What are they doing?" Vextara demanded as he watched the impossible scene on his tactical display. "Are those construction vehicles?" "Yes, High Commander," Keltar replied weakly. "They appear to be using industrial equipment as boarding devices." Inside the Valorian cruiser, the ship's internal defenses activated as the human mechs cut through the hull. Bioelectric barriers tried to stop the intruders, but the construction suits were designed to work in hostile environments. Electromagnetic fields and energy discharges that would have stopped a normal boarding party were simply absorbed by the mech's industrial shielding. Sergeant Ye Jin was leading the first human boarding action against an alien vessel. She and her Marines had crossed from the construction mechs into the Valorian ship, where they found themselves in corridors that pulsed with organic light. The alien ship was beautiful inside, with walls that seemed to breathe and floors that glowed with soft phosphorescence. It was also completely unprepared for human infantry tactics. "Contact front!" Yejin called as a group of Valorian warriors appeared around a bend in the corridor. The aliens were tall and graceful, their skin shimmering with protective biofields that could deflect energy weapons. The Marines opened fire with simple ballistic rifles, weapons that fired metal bullets using chemical propellants. The technology was thousands of years old by human standards, but the Valorian personal shields had never encountered anything like it. The aliens' biofields, designed to stop plasma bolts and energy beams, were useless against solid projectiles. The human bullets punched through the protective barriers like they weren't there, and the Valorian warriors fell in shock and confusion. "Sergeant," one of her Marines called out, "these aliens have never seen ballistic weapons before. Their defenses are completely wrong for this kind of fight." Yejin nodded grimly. "Then let's teach them what human infantry can do." Back on Earth, the mood had shifted from celebration to amazement. The crowds in Seoul's Victory Square were watching construction mechs tear apart alien warships while human Marines fought inside the enemy vessels. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. Dr. Yoon-ji found herself standing next to the old man who had been explaining the battle to his grandson. The boy was staring at the screens with wide eyes. "Grandfather," the child asked, "why are the aliens so bad at fighting?" The old man chuckled. "They're not bad at fighting, boy. They're just fighting the wrong kind of war. They prepared for an elegant duel with energy weapons, and the humans brought sledgehammers and shotguns." Merchant Captain Dong-ho was finally getting his chance to participate. His freighter, loaded with mining charges, received orders to join a group of civilian vessels in a special mission. "All volunteer ships," came the transmission from Admiral Kyung-min. "You are authorized to engage enemy vessels with extreme prejudice. Your mining charges are now officially classified as military ordnance." Dong-ho grinned as he looked at his cargo hold full of industrial explosives. "Boys," he told his crew, "we're going asteroid mining, except the asteroids are fighting back, this time." The civilian volunteers, dozens of mining ships and cargo haulers, began accelerating toward the retreating Valorian fleet. To the aliens, they looked like harmless support vessels. The Valorians had no way of knowing that each ship was loaded with enough explosives to split a small moon. High Commander Vexitara was beginning to understand that his intelligence about humanity had been catastrophically wrong. These weren't primitives who had barely achieved spaceflight. They were a species that had turned everything, construction equipment, industrial tools, civilian cargo ships, into weapons of war. "Sub-Commander Keltar," he said quietly, "signal the Imperial Second Fleet. Request immediate reinforcement." "Sir, are you certain?" "That will require explaining to the Imperial Council that we've been defeated by primitives." Vextara looked at his tactical display, where human ships were systematically hunting down his remaining vessels. His elegant fleet, pride of the Valorian Empire, was being torn apart by beings who fought like they had been doing it for millennia. "I don't think," he said slowly, "that these humans are as primitive as we thought." The emergency session of the Valorian War Council convened on the capital world of Valoris Prime as reports from the Sol system reached the highest levels of the Empire. Emperor Zalkoth, a massive figure whose bioluminescent skin patterns indicated supreme authority, sat on his living throne as the impossible news was delivered. "You are telling me," the Emperor said slowly, his 4 eyes focused on the trembling messenger, "that the Third Imperial Fleet has been defeated by primitives who achieved spaceflight less than 3 centuries ago?" "Yes, Your Imperial Majesty," the messenger replied, his skin shifting through colors of fear and shame. "High Commander Vexitara reports that human weapons utilize kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Their ships appear to be flying fortresses rather than proper vessels of war." War Council leader Morthek stepped forward, his silver skin gleaming with skepticism. "This is impossible. Our intelligence clearly shows that these humans use chemical propulsion and metal projectiles. How could such primitive technology defeat bioshields that have protected our fleets for millennia?" The messenger activated a holographic projector showing recorded footage from the battle. The War Council watched in stunned silence as human ships tore through Valorian formations with weapons that seemed to violate every principle of civilized warfare. "By the ancestors," whispered Council member Telvara, her skin turning pale with shock. "They're using industrial equipment as weapons. Look, those are construction vehicles attacking our ships." Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Captain Haywan was leading a pursuit force after the remnants of the Valorian fleet. Her destroyer Busan, Thunder had been joined by 6 other fast ships, and they were methodically hunting down alien vessels that were trying to escape to hyperspace. "Captain," her weapons officer reported, "enemy cruiser attempting to jump. They're charging their organic drive systems." "Not on my watch," Haywan replied. "Fire all batteries. Don't let them get away." The Busan Thunder unleashed a devastating barrage of tungsten penetrators at the fleeing Valorian ship. The alien vessel's biodrives were delicate organic systems that required precise energy balance to open hyperspace portals. Kinetic impacts disrupted that balance catastrophically. The Valorian cruiser's jump attempt failed spectacularly. Instead of disappearing into hyperspace, the ship's drive systems overloaded, creating a brilliant explosion that lit up space for millions of kilometers. The shockwave destroyed 2 nearby alien escort vessels and sent debris spinning through the outer system. "Scratch another one," Haywan announced with satisfaction. "Helm, set course for the next target. We're not letting any of them get back to report what they've seen here." Unknown to the pursuing human ships, 1 Valorian vessel had managed to escape. Commander Jin Woo's military engineer had achieved something that should have been impossible. He had rigged mining charges from civilian freighters to act as improvised mines throughout the outer system. The Valorian scout ship Silent Observer thought it had found a clear path to hyperspace when it triggered one of Merchant Captain Dong Ho's special deliveries. The mining charge, designed to crack asteroids, vaporized the alien scout in a brilliant flash of nuclear fire. "That's for threatening Earth," Dong Ho muttered as he watched the explosion from his freighter's bridge. His ship was now part of an improvised naval unit made up entirely of civilian volunteers, cargo haulers, mining ships, and orbital construction, vessels that had been converted into weapons of war. Back on Earth, Dr. Yunji was treating wounded human personnel at Seoul General Hospital. Remarkably, there were very few casualties from the space battle. The human fleet's superior armor and weapons had allowed them to dominate the engagement with minimal losses. "Doctor," one of her patients said, a young lieutenant who had been injured when his ship's acceleration compensators failed during a high-speed maneuver, "is it true that we're capturing alien prisoners?" "Yes," Yunji replied as she checked his vital signs. "Several Valorian crews have surrendered rather than fight to the death. They'll be treated according to standard prisoner of war protocols." What she didn't mention was how shocked the alien prisoners were by human medical technology. The Valorians were accustomed to biohealing systems that worked with their natural physiology. Human medicine, with its mechanical instruments and chemical treatments, seemed barbarically primitive to them. Yet it was proving remarkably effective at keeping both human and alien patients alive. Lieutenant Jae-sung was still aboard the stealth frigate Incheon Ghost, which remained hidden within the scattered remains of the Valorian fleet. His mission had evolved from intelligence gathering to search and rescue, specifically rescuing alien survivors who were willing to surrender. "Captain Min-ho," he reported, "I'm detecting life signs aboard the damaged cruiser Harmony of Stars. Their biosystems are failing, but there are definitely survivors." "Take us alongside," Captain Min-ho ordered. "Let's see if these aliens are interested in staying alive." The rescue operation that followed would have seemed impossible to the Valorian War Council if they could have witnessed it. Human Marines, the same ones who had been fighting alien warriors just hours before, were now working to save alien lives. Sergeant Yejin led her team through the damaged Valorian ship, providing emergency medical aid to wounded aliens who could barely understand what was happening. "Sergeant," one of her Marines called out, "this alien is trying to say something. I think he's asking why we're helping them." Yejin looked at the wounded Valorian warrior, whose bioluminescent skin was flickering weakly. Through the universal translator, she said, "Because that's what civilized beings do. The war is over for you now." The alien stared at her with all four eyes, clearly struggling to understand why his enemies were saving his life. In Valorian culture, defeated warriors were either enslaved or executed. The concept of treating prisoners with medical care was completely foreign to him. Chief Engineer Su Jin was having the time of her career examining captured Valorian technology aboard the battlecruiser Daegu Hammer. The alien biosystems were incredible works of art and science, grown rather than built, alive rather than mechanical. "Commander Jin Woo," she called excitedly, "you need to see this. Their bio-armor doesn't just absorb energy, it learns from it. Each hit makes it stronger against similar attacks. It's adaptive biological engineering on a scale I've never imagined." "Can we use it?" the commander asked. "Better than that," Su Jin replied with a grin. "I think I can improve it. Their biosystems are designed for energy weapons, but if we could adapt them for kinetic impacts, we could create armor that gets stronger every time it's hit by anything." Admiral Kyung-min was receiving reports from across the solar system as the battle wound down. The Valorian Third Fleet had been completely destroyed or captured with minimal human casualties. It was a victory beyond anyone's wildest expectations. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the Valorian flagship. High Commander Vexitara is requesting negotiation terms." "Put him through," the Admiral said. Vexitara's image appeared on the screen, and the change in the alien commander was remarkable. His confident bearing was gone, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. His skin patterns were shifting rapidly through colors that the human translation system identified as distress, confusion, and grudging respect. "Admiral Kyung-min," Vexitara said formally, "I request audience to discuss terms of cessation of hostilities." "High Commander," the Admiral replied politely, "I believe the proper term is surrender. And yes, we're willing to discuss terms. However, I should inform you that your Empire's aggressive actions against human space have consequences beyond this battle." "Consequences?" Vexitara asked nervously. Admiral Kyung-min smiled, but it wasn't a particularly friendly expression. "High Commander, did you really think we would limit ourselves to defensive actions? Human ships are already en route to Valorian space. We believe in making our point clearly. On Valoris Prime, Emperor Zalkoth was receiving reports that made no sense. Human ships, vessels that shouldn't exist according to all intelligence reports, were appearing throughout the outer regions of the Empire. 3 Valorian colony worlds had received diplomatic visits from Terran fleets carrying enough firepower to sterilize continents. "How is this possible?" the Emperor demanded. "How did these primitives develop faster than light travel that superior? To our own? How are they already inside our territory?" War Council leader Morthek was studying the tactical reports with growing alarm. "Your Majesty, it appears that our intelligence about human capabilities was fundamentally flawed. These beings are not primitives. They are a fully advanced military civilization that has been deliberately concealing the extent of their technology. Or, suggested Council Member Telvara quietly, they have been preparing for war for a very long time. The terrible truth was beginning to dawn on the Valorian leadership. Humanity had not been caught off guard by first contact with aliens. They had been ready for it, prepared for it, and when the Galactic Empire had issued its ultimatum, the humans had responded not with fear, but with anticipation. Emperor Zalkoth sat back on his living throne, his bioluminescent patterns dimming with the weight of the emergency session O. The emergency alert reached every corner of the Valorian Empire simultaneously. On the industrial world of Kepler's Garden, workers stopped their biocultivation as news arrived that human warships had appeared in orbit. On the trading hub of Silver Harbor, merchants fled their stalls when Terran vessels materialized near the space stations. Across 47 star systems, the impossible was happening. The primitives were inside Valorian space. Emperor Zalkoth stood before the Grand Assembly of the Empire, his bioluminescent patterns shifting through colors of deep concern. Representatives from every member species filled the vast chamber, their various forms creating a tapestry of alien life. All of them were asking the same question. How had humans penetrated the most secure space in the galaxy? Citizens of the Empire, the Emperor began, his voice carrying across the assembly through bioacoustic amplifiers, we face an unprecedented situation. The human species, initially cataloged as primitive, has demonstrated military capabilities that exceed our projections by several orders of magnitude. Council Member Telvara activated a holographic display showing the current tactical situation. Red markers indicated human fleet positions throughout Valorian space, while blue markers showed Imperial forces scrambling to respond. The humans have achieved something we believed impossible, she explained to the stunned assembly. They have deployed faster-than-light capable warships to strategic positions throughout our territory in less than 6 standard hours. Their jump technology appears to be vastly superior to our biodrives. What the Valorians didn't understand was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Ever since achieving faster-than-light travel, human exploration vessels had been quietly mapping hyperspace routes throughout the local galaxy. When the Valorian ultimatum arrived, Admiral Kyung-min had activation codes for pre-positioned supply caches and navigation beacons that allowed human fleets to appear anywhere they chose. Captain Haewon was commanding one of those fleets as her task force emerged from hyperspace near the Valorian colony world of New Prosperity. Her destroyers and cruisers arranged themselves in a defensive formation that could have reduced the planet's orbital installations to debris within minutes. This is Captain Haewon of the Terran Defense Force, she broadcast on all frequencies. We come in peace, but we come prepared for war. We request immediate audience with your planetary governor. The response came quickly from the planet's surface. Governor Yelkoth, a middle-aged Valorian with the silver skin markings of administrative rank, appeared on the communication screen with obvious nervousness. Captain Haewon, he said carefully, your presence here is unexpected. New Prosperity is a peaceful colony world with no military installations. We're aware of that, Governor, Haewon replied. We're not here to conquer your world. We're here to deliver a message from humanity to the Valorian Empire. The message is simple. We tried being neighborly. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Su Jin was aboard the heavy cruiser Daegu Hammer, leading a similar diplomatic mission to the Valorian industrial world of Kepler's Garden. Her ship's advanced sensors were analyzing the alien planet's impressive biotechnology infrastructure with professional interest. "Commander Jinwoo," she reported, "their orbital biofarms are incredible. They're literally growing spacecraft components in zero gravity. The engineering principles are fascinating." "Focus, Sujin," the commander replied with amusement. "We're here to make a point, not conduct a research expedition." "Right, sir. But after we make our point, could we possibly arrange a technology exchange? Their bioengineering combined with our kinetic systems could produce some very interesting results." The conversation was interrupted by an incoming transmission from the planet's surface. Industrial Coordinator Thexmar, a Valorian whose skin bore the complex patterns of master craftsman rank, was clearly trying to understand why human warships were studying his biofarms. "Human vessels," he transmitted, "we detect you are scanning our industrial facilities. If you intend conquest, we must inform you that our production capabilities are protected by Imperial law." Sujin took over the communication with Commander Jinwoo's permission. "Coordinator Thexmar, we have no interest in conquering your facilities. We're engineers ourselves, and we appreciate good work when we see it. However, we do need to discuss certain recent actions by your empire." What followed was one of the strangest diplomatic conversations in galactic history. Sujin, speaking, as both a military officer and an engineer, explained to the alien coordinator that humanity viewed the Valorian ultimatum as extremely poor diplomatic form. The Valorians, she pointed out, had threatened to destroy human civilization without even attempting normal first contact protocols. "But your species was catalogued as primitive," Thexmar protested. "Imperial doctrine requires integration of less advanced civilizations for their own protection." "Coordinator," Sujin replied gently, "I think your empire's definition of primitive may need some revision. Back on Earth, Dr. Yunji was dealing with an unprecedented medical situation. The captured Valorian prisoners were suffering from something that human doctors had never seen before: psychological trauma caused by having their entire worldview shattered." "Doctor?" her assistant asked. "What exactly is wrong with them?" "Their physical injuries are healing normally." Yunji looked at the alien patients through the medical bay's viewing window. The Valorians were huddled together, their bioluminescent skin patterns flickering weakly. Through the universal translator, she could hear them talking quietly among themselves, trying to understand what had happened to them. "They're experiencing what we might call existential shock," she explained. "For over 1,000 years, the Valorian Empire has been the dominant military force in the galaxy. Every species they've encountered has been inferior to them in technology and warfare. We're the first civilization they've met that can not only fight them, but defeat them." The alien prisoners were struggling with more than just military defeat. They were trying to comprehend how a species they considered primitive had developed technology that surpassed their own. Even worse, from their perspective, humans seemed to approach warfare with a brutality and efficiency that violated every Valorian concept of civilized behavior. Lieutenant Jae Sung was monitoring Valorian communications from multiple sources, and the picture he was building was troubling for the aliens. Human fleets were appearing throughout their empire, not to conquer, but to demonstrate capability. Each appearance came with the same message: humanity was willing to discuss peace, but only as equals. "Captain Minho," he reported from the Incheon, Ghost. "The Valorian Imperial Council is in emergency session. They're debating whether to mobilize their entire military or attempt diplomatic contact." "Any word on what they're leaning toward?" the captain asked. Based on intercepted communications, about half want to fight and half want to negotiate. The problem is, the ones who want to fight don't understand what they'd be fighting against. The debate raging within the Valorian leadership was between two completely different philosophies. The military faction, led by War Council leader Morthek, believed that the Empire's honor demanded a military response to human aggression. The diplomatic faction, growing stronger as more reports arrived, argued that humanity had demonstrated capabilities that made military action suicidal. Emperor Zalkoth was facing the most difficult decision in the Empire's history. The humans had not attacked civilian targets or demanded territory. Instead, they had systematically demonstrated that they could appear anywhere in Valorian space at will with enough firepower to destroy entire worlds. "Your Imperial Majesty," Council member Telvara said during a private meeting, "we must consider the possibility that continued hostilities with humanity could result in the destruction of our civilization." "You suggest surrender?" the Emperor asked. "I suggest negotiation from a position of mutual respect rather than assumed superiority," she replied carefully. "The humans have shown remarkable restraint. They could have destroyed every world they've visited, but instead they've sent diplomatic messages." Admiral Kyung-min was aboard the Soul's Pride when he received a priority transmission from Earth. President Park, humanity's elected leader, appeared on the communication screen with a grave expression. "Admiral," the president said, "the Valorian Emperor has requested direct communication with our government. He's asking for a formal peace conference." "That's excellent news, sir. What are our terms?" "Complete withdrawal of all Valorian military forces from human space, recognition of humanity as an independent species, and formal diplomatic relations based on equality. We're also demanding reparations for their unprovoked attack on our fleet." Admiral Kyung-min smiled. "And if they refuse? Then we continue demonstrating why threatening humanity was a very poor decision," the president replied. "Admiral, I want you to understand something. This isn't just about defeating the Valorian Empire. This is about establishing humanity's place in the galaxy. Every species out there is watching to see how this ends." Merchant Captain Dong Ho was part of a human fleet that had appeared near the Valorian military shipyard at Iron Harbor. His freighter, still loaded with mining charges, was technically part of a diplomatic miss. The peace conference took place on the neutral station Harmony Point, a massive orbital platform that the Valorians had built centuries earlier for diplomatic meetings between member species of their empire. Now, for the first time in its history, the station hosted negotiations between the Empire and an external power that had defeated them in battle. Admiral Kyung-min arrived aboard the Soul's Pride, accompanied by a small fleet of human vessels that remained at respectful distance from the station. The message was clear but subtle. Humanity came in peace, but peace backed by overwhelming military capability. High Commander Vexitara was among the Valorian delegation, though his role had been significantly reduced after the disaster at Sol. He watched through the station's bioluminescent windows as human ships maintained their positions with mechanical precision. Everything about the humans seemed to emphasize efficiency over elegance, function over form. "Sub-Commander Keltar," he said quietly, "look at their formations. Even their diplomatic escort is arranged for maximum tactical advantage." "Yes, sir," Keltar replied, his skin showing colors of nervous respect. "They fight the way they do everything else, practically and effectively." Emperor Zalkoth himself had come to the negotiations, an unprecedented gesture that demonstrated how seriously the Empire was taking the situation. He entered the main conference chamber with a delegation of his most senior advisors, their bioluminescent patterns carefully controlled to show dignity despite the circumstances. Admiral Kyung-min stood as the Emperor entered, offering a respectful bow that acknowledged the alien leader's status without suggesting subservience. The gesture was precisely calculated, respectful enough to begin negotiations, but not so deep as to suggest that humanity considered itself defeated. "Your Imperial." "Majesty," Admiral Kyung-min said through the universal translator, "humanity appreciates your willingness to meet with us. We hope this marks the beginning of a more productive relationship between our peoples." Emperor Zalkoth's 4 eyes studied the human admiral with curiosity. This was his first direct encounter with a member of the species that had shattered his empire's military confidence in a single day. The human appeared smaller and more fragile than most Valorian warriors, yet he commanded fleets that could appear anywhere in the galaxy at will. "Admiral Kyung-min," the Emperor replied, his bioluminescent patterns showing careful diplomatic neutrality. "The Valorian Empire acknowledges that our initial approach to first contact was perhaps too hasty. We are here to discuss terms for peaceful coexistence." Dr. Yunji was part of the human delegation, serving as both a medical advisor and a cultural liaison. She had spent weeks studying the Valorian prisoners and learning about their society. What she had discovered was fascinating and troubling in equal measure. "Your Majesty," she said respectfully, "before we discuss terms, I think it's important that both sides understand what happened in our recent conflict. From our perspective, the Valorian Empire issued an ultimatum that threatened the complete destruction of human civilization. This was not merely an act of war, it was a threat of genocide." Council member Telvara, who had become the leading voice for peace within the Valorian government, responded carefully. "Dr. Yunji, our actions were based on imperial doctrine regarding primitive species. For over 1,000 years, integration into the Empire has been seen as protection for less advanced civilizations." "And that," Chief Engineer Sujin interjected, from her position at the conference table, "is where your intelligence failed catastrophically. Humanity has never been primitive. We've been spacefaring for over 2 centuries, and we've been preparing for contact with alien civilizations for decades." High Commander Vexistara, despite his reduced status, couldn't help but ask the question that had been haunting him since the battle. "How? How did your species develop weapons that our greatest minds never imagined? Your kinetic accelerators achieve velocities that should be impossible." Sujin smiled, the expression of an engineer who enjoyed her work. "High Commander, there's nothing impossible about magnetic acceleration. We've been using the principles for centuries in smaller applications. The challenge wasn't inventing the technology, it was scaling it up and making it reliable enough for military use." "But your ships," Vexitara continued, "they're built like fortresses rather than vessels. Why sacrifice elegance for crude durability?" "Because," Admiral Kyung-min answered, "elegance doesn't stop tungsten penetrators moving at 30% of light speed. High Commander, your empire developed technology for a specific type of warfare. Elegant, long-range duels between ships, with similar capabilities. Humanity developed technology for survival against any possible threat. What followed was a conversation that would reshape galactic politics for centuries to come. The humans explained with patience and thoroughness how their species had spent 10,000 years fighting each other before reaching the stars. Every human weapon, every defensive system, every tactical doctrine had been tested in countless wars against opponents who knew all the same tricks. You see, Dr. Yunji explained, when the Valorian Empire encountered other species, you were dealing with civilizations that had developed in relative peace. They fought wars, certainly, but not the kind of total technological warfare that humanity has been perfecting for millennia. Emperor Zalkoth was beginning to understand the magnitude of his empire's miscalculation. You are saying that humanity is a warrior species by nature? Not exactly, Admiral Kyung Min corrected. We're a survival species. We became warriors because we had to, and we became very good at it because the alternative was extinction. When you threatened our survival, you activated instincts that have been honed by thousands of years of conflict. Lieutenant Jae Sung, monitoring communications from his position aboard the Incheon Ghost, reported that news of the negotiations was spreading throughout Valorian space. The reaction was mixed. Some worlds were relieved that the war was ending, while others were struggling to accept that their invincible empire had been defeated by newcomers. Captain Hai Wan, commanding the human fleet elements stationed throughout Valorian territory, was receiving similar reports from her ships. The alien populations were curious about humanity, but also deeply worried about what human dominance might mean for the galaxy. Admiral, she transmitted to the peace conference, the Valorian civilians seem to expect us to start demanding tribute and establishing colonies. They don't understand why we're not acting like conquerors. This observation led to one of the most important moments of the negotiations. Emperor Zalkoth asked directly, "What does humanity want from this victory? Territory? Resources? Subjugation of our empire?" Admiral Kyung Min's answer would become legendary in galactic history. "Your Majesty, humanity wants something very simple: to be left alone. We want to explore the galaxy, trade with whoever is willing, and develop our civilization in peace. We don't want to rule anyone else. We just want to make sure that nobody tries to rule us." The concept was so foreign to Valorian thinking that Emperor Zalkoth had to ask for clarification. "You defeated our military forces, penetrated our space at will, and demonstrated the ability to destroy our worlds. Yet you seek no territorial gains or tribute?" "Correct," the Admiral confirmed. "Humanity has no interest in empire building. We've seen what happens when one species tries to dominate others. It usually ends badly for everyone involved." Chief, Engineer Su Jin added her own perspective. "Besides, Your Majesty, we're much more interested in your biotechnology than your territory. A peaceful technology exchange would benefit both our species far more than conquest." The negotiations continued for 3 days, with both sides working to establish a framework for peaceful coexistence. The final agreement was remarkable in its simplicity and fairness. The Valorian Empire would recognize humanity as an independent, sovereign species. All Valorian military forces would withdraw from human space. Reparations would be paid for the unprovoked attack on the human fleet. In exchange, humanity would withdraw its demonstration fleets from Valorian territory and establish formal diplomatic relations with the Empire. Most surprisingly, humans offered to share certain non-military technologies with the Valorians, particularly in the areas of manufacturing and resource extraction. Merchant Captain Dong Ho was among the first to benefit from the new relationship. His freight company received contracts to transport goods between human and Valorian worlds, escorted by warships from both species. The same mining charges that had been weapons just weeks before were now being sold to Valorian asteroid mining operations. Dr. Yunji established the first cross-species medical research program, studying how human and Valorian healing techniques could be combined. The results were remarkable. Human surgical procedures proved excellent for acute trauma, while Valorian biohealing was superior for long-term recovery. The most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity. News of the conflict spread to every known species, carrying the message that the new arrivals were not to be underestimated. More importantly, it demonstrated that humanity was willing to fight for its independence but had no interest in conquering others. High Commander Vexitara, his career effectively ended by the disaster at Seoul, found himself in an